Thanks very much, Andrew, and thanks for the invitation. And you can thank also one of your more determined Tasmanian Nuffield scholars, Jane Bennett, who didn't really give me all that much choice. Can I also welcome all of you from the North Island to Tasmania, and hope you enjoy another overseas trip. Also my parliamentary colleague, Eric Hutchinson, who's certainly very much has been part of the agricultural scene here in Tasmania for a long time as a wool buyer, and someone who puts a lot of effort into the well-being of the agricultural sector here in Tassie. And I should also acknowledge one of the other forces of agriculture here in Tasmania, in Jan Davis from the TFGA, who has certainly given a strong voice to that organisation in this state. To Rob Bradley, the Tasmanian chairman of Nuffield, and I think Peter Nixon, also a former chairman here. Welcome everybody, and this would have to be one of the more daunting gigs for a Member of Parliament, because it's such a powerhouse of information in agriculture that's occurred through study and overseas experience. And so I reflect on that as part of what I'm going to say today, and the contribution that ends up making to agriculture in this country, where growth of the industry, productivity is such an important thing. And it's probably also pertinent that, according to the figures that I've been given by the department, that between 94-95 and 2011-12, agriculture in respect of productivity was the best performing sector in the country. We often talk about the fact that we used to live on the sheep's back, but I do recall during the global financial crisis, it was actually agriculture and the performance of agriculture that kept us out of recession. Some people in Canberra take credit for keeping us out of recession, but it's actually the performance of industry, and particularly agriculture, that played a significant role in that. I think that's something that we can all be proud of. We're often under enormous pressure from an agricultural perspective from those in the cities. They all believe they have an affinity with agriculture. Quite a few of them drive a four-wheel drive to prove it, but that's about as close as it gets. But in the context of the importance to this country, the importance to agriculture, to trade, and the place that agriculture plays, as an industry that exports 60% of its production, the role of Australians going overseas, understanding what's happening in markets overseas, understanding what's happening in industries overseas, really is important. And you only have to look around and consider the work that's been done, the industries that have been developed, that come as a result of programs such as Nuffield. Here in Tasmania, Strathia Instant Lawn came about because Bill Casamati went overseas on a Nuffield scholarship to see what was happening there, and now we have a world-leading industry, business, that's operating here in Australia. If you want to know about and have an understanding of food provenance, read Jane Bennett's work. It certainly helped me in my understanding of that particular issue. And when we're talking about a lot of concerns that are expressed in the Australian community around food, food labelling and its provenance, Jane's work is really very, very instructive in that process. So there is an enormous amount of really positive work, and I know many people who are currently in business now and developing their businesses. Francine's at Turners Beach and the work that they're doing, and in so many places where the opportunity to go and look outside and see what's happening somewhere else in the world and bring that experience home and apply it not only to your own business but also share it with other businesses in the country and in the region, I think are really important. And for programs such as this to provide that support and assistance is really vital. And I can equate that to my own experience, the opportunities that I've had to do study tours as a Member of Parliament, to undertake parliamentary delegations, really does open your eyes, it does broaden your thoughts, and that exposure to what's happening in other markets, seeing what the opportunities in other markets, and rather than just reading about it or hearing about it, being able to experience it, but taking the opportunity to sit, talk with others, and really firsthand see what's happening. And probably the most pivotal one for me was a delegation I was on a few years ago to China and Indonesia, and to see the disposal of people in those countries to want to interact and to trade with us. It completely changed my perceptions, and it opened up my eyes to particular trade opportunities, but also focused my thoughts on what the really important elements of what we ought to be doing as a nation with respect to our trade negotiations with those countries. We're often criticised for swanning off overseas as members of Parliament, but unless we have those experiences, I don't think we're in a position where, in respect of trade and things that are also important to our constituencies and to the rest of the country, to actually make some of the best decisions, unless we actually do that work. And that's what I think is so important about the opportunities that an organisation such as Nuffield offers to people in rural and regional Australia and the farming community. The learnings that I picked up from my time on those delegations, whether I was looking at forestry in Finland or carbon storage, talking to people in France and Germany and the UK, fisheries management in the United Kingdom, and of course trade in China and Indonesia, really do feed into the work that we can continue to do in respect of opening up trade opportunities for Australians and Australian businesses. And going back to that point that I made about exporting 60% of what we grow, and also needing to have alternative outlets for our products rather than just having to be reliant on the local market, it's really important. And that's why, as a government, we've been so focused on finalising free trade agreements over the last 12 months. So free trade with South Korea, which even though it isn't ratified, I know is already having impacts in Australia, particularly in the rock lobster industry in South Australia and Tasmania, where, because there is a free trade agreement in the offing, the South Koreans have come down and said, what might there be that we can start trading? They've decided they like our rock lobsters. Our Chinese customers have said, well, hang on, they're our rock lobsters, and the price went from $65 to $115 a kilo. Competition and the opportunity to have alternative markets, providing a return back to Australian primary producers. And that's one of the real reasons that I'm so focused on that and achieving those goals as a government, because even though it's not ratified, I'm already seeing results from the South Korean one. Japan is a slightly more mature market, but having an advantage against our trade competitors into that market is of real value to us. And while people might be disappointed that the tariffs aren't down as low as they think they might like, the benefit comes in having a better entry tariff than our trade competitors and making us more competitive in that market. And that's part of what we need to achieve. And of course, the one that we're working on at the moment with China, where the markets are of a scale that I think most people in Australia don't really understand. When I was there, I was told in Beijing that I was going to a small southwestern provincial city, a place called Kunming. And that was 7 million people. They had a business there, and I spoke to the owner that was the size of one of our major retail businesses operating in that city, a market the size of Sydney and Melbourne. to get a slice of that market is quite significant, and the opportunities to get into that market. They'd held an Australia month, and after 14 days they were asking for more produce because they'd sold everything that they could get their hands on. So the way that we're seen in that market, and to have that experience of talking to someone who is running a business in that market, operating in that market, and then sitting down over lunch and her telling me that she was buying Bellamy's baby food from Australia because she knew it was safe. And it was at that moment I understood very, very clearly one of the real advantages we have in that Chinese market. Their understanding of the quality and the food safety of what we produce here in Australia. And I've often heard farmers, as we've developed food safety management systems, complaining about the paperwork that they have to do. Well, here's an opportunity for some payoff out of that. Real opportunity for some payoff out of that. And so they're the sorts of things that I think, and those of you who have experienced that international market experience would clearly understand. So in that context, it's really important that programs such as this exist so that those innovations can come into the Australian market. It's really a real pleasure to be here. I wish you all the very well for your deliberations for the day. Unfortunately, I can't stay as long as I have because I have another international experience to get ready for in the morning and a dinner in Sydney tonight. But it's great to be here. I look forward to interacting with those of you who I can during the morning this morning. It's a real pleasure, seriously real pleasure to open the conference today. Thanks very much.